Welcome back to Suits and Laterals. I am filling in this week for Jeff Rich, who is off. I'm Damian Bowman, along with my good friend from the West Coast, Mr. Chris Green. Chris, how are you?
I'm great, Damian. How are you?
I'm well. It's nice to be back in the chair here with you.
It's good to have you.
Yeah, I think it's been about 4 or 5 weeks since I've been here. And I want to start with the big topic of the business week, if you will. Yahoo and the NFL did a football game on Sunday. The London game was exclusively over the internet, and whatever the numbers that you might believe, some people are saying only 2 million concurrent users. Others are saying 33 million total users, or viewers, I mean. Whatever that number is, I think that the broadcast of it was a success, depending on which device you were looking at. And if you want to get to the technicalities of it, we can do that at another podcast on another show at another time. But I think overall, most people enjoyed the podcast, or enjoyed the game and the broadcast. Chris, did you have?
They enjoy our podcast too.
They enjoy our podcast too. That's correct. What do you think about the NFL potentially taking games from television and putting them internet only?
I don't have a problem with it. I mean, as the newer millennial generation is out there, this whole cutting the cord is the new big thing, where people are getting rid of cable or satellite to watch things on the internet. I mean, with the invention of Netflix and Hulu and all these other streaming services, people just don't have the need to have a television at home that they're going to watch, or I should say a cable box, because they can watch internet on the television. But to pay the fees that these companies charge you now, when they can access this stuff at a huge discount online. So I think the NFL is smart to look into this. I mean, I know they've expanded their offering in recent years to for the Sunday ticket. You can now watch it on your portable devices as well as on your TV. So I think this is the logical next step.
Do you subscribe to MLB TV or NBA
I do.
TV? Okay.
I do.
Okay. So, and I think you know where I'm going with this. And I don't think that the NFL will go the way of Major League Baseball and put all of their games on internet, through an app or whatever. But I could certainly see them taking maybe the second half of that Thursday night package and leaving it on NFL Network, and then putting, the alternate stream maybe through the internet.
Yeah, that would make perfect sense.
Because if I remember correctly, only the first half of the season goes through CBS, right? And then halfway through they change? Okay, right. So I could see them maybe doing that. And then obviously Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football are available on the internet, but you have to have a cable subscription. But the difference is with Yahoo's thing, it was free for everybody in the United States, no matter where you lived or if you had cable or whatever. And I'd be interested to see if the NFL would partner with an internet company to do that. And I don't know if you know this, but a few years ago, there was a thought that Google might bid for a package of games from the NFL.
Yeah, I had actually heard that. I know when the DirecTV pack, or the NFL Sunday package came available for the first time in years, that they were one of the rumored companies who could bid for it.
Yeah, so it's 2015, and internet streaming has been going on for 10 years, believe it or not. And I'm not sure that the infrastructure is there to maybe consistently do multiple games at the same time. But I would be very much in favor of them giving us, the 3 games that we get every Sunday, and then 2 alternate games, 2 different games, one at the 1 o'clock slot and then one at the 4 o'clock slot, that are internet only, that are outside of your viewing area.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's definitely. That's a win for the fans. I think there's lots of options they could look at. You could do a la carte, where you pick your specific team and say, I want to get their games on the internet. There's plenty of different routes they could go with this. It just depends, number one, on how much the internet providers are willing to pay for this, because obviously the NFL is making a ton of money on these TV deals, so that's going to come into play as well.
Right, and Yahoo did pay $20 million for the rights to broadcast Sunday's game. So I don't expect that they'll pay $20 million every week, for a package of games. But I could see somewhere in the neighborhood of around $100 million for the entire season, for maybe 10 games. I think that's a good number. If you do maybe those middle 10 weeks of the season that are kind of the meat of the schedule or whatever, I think that would kind of work for many fans.
Sure. I mean, here's one thing to look at with this too: is who is the biggest loser if something like this happens? Is it the TV networks, or is it the local bars perhaps that get these NFL packages and show their games? They bring in the crowds, like you have the Browns backers bars or the Steelers fans bars or whatever your team's bar is to go watch these games.
Yeah, that's a good question because I'm not sure, obviously, who the biggest loser is, but I would guess that it would be the television networks because they already pay for, these games, and for these games to be simulcast over the internet for free without requiring people to have a cable subscription is a big loss for them.
Sure, but I mean, you got to look at it this way. Yes, this game was free, but if they're going to start paying that kind of money for these games, they're not going to stay free on the internet.
Well, if you're Yahoo, think about it this way. If you're Yahoo and you sell 30-second advertisements for, I don't know, $150,000 or $200,000 and you pay $2 million or $20 million for it, what's really your incentive to charge people?
That's a good question. I mean, it always comes down to dollars and cents for these companies, I would think. So, I mean, yes, you may be making the money in the commercials, but you know how greedy these companies get. I mean, they may not charge you like a much, maybe they charge you a few dollars or something like that, but I could see where they charge you at some point.
And this loops into a different conversation about technology or whatever, and about cord cutting and stuff. And I know that's not really something that we focus on here, but or YouTube just went to YouTube Red, which was you pay $10 a month and you get all the YouTube and Google Play Music or whatever for $10 a month, no ads, no whatever. And I think that if maybe Google had instead done this, or in the future does a package of games like this, I could see this being included in their YouTube Red or Google Red thing or offering or whatever they call that.
Sure. So it kind of reminds me a little bit of the Amazon Prime thing where they bring all kinds of things together. I mean, whether you're shipping and then you get the streaming video and whatever else they add into that.
If Google came to you and said, Chris, I'm going to give you 2 games a day, 2 games per Sunday that we pick. You don't get any choice, and it costs you $10 a month, and you get it for free, right, included with all that other stuff. Would you do it?
It depends on the other stuff, to be honest. I don't know that if I don't get any say in the games, that would be a tougher sell for me.
Interesting. Okay. Because here's how I look at it. As a NFL fan, but not a fan of any specific team, the chance to be able to watch or have access to, I guess that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games on a Sunday, when I only have access to, what do I have, 3 now? If I get the addition of 2 extra games, one at 1 o'clock and one at 4, then to me that's worth it if I want to just channel surf and flip between games.
Yeah, and that's the other thing too, is it's you can only watch so many games at one time as well. So I mean, if you're talking they give you an on-demand option or something along those lines, then maybe we talk, but that's something else you have to look at. Yeah,
and I'd be interested to see. I kind of think maybe the NFL wants to maybe do a package like MLB TV does, because they already have that all 32 thing that they do, or
the all 22.
The all 22. I'm sorry. What does it come out like Tuesdays or something? And you get the feed, yeah. And I have to think that if they weren't already getting like $1.8 billion a year from their television partners, they would do the offering.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all.
Yeah. And I think that this is maybe the first step. And I think the majority of those contracts are up in like 2020. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do maybe something similar to what we said, or maybe if they just say you can get all the games on television, or you can pay us, $200 a year. They probably would charge you something crazy like that. And you could have every game all the time except for the ones in your market.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense. It's like I said, I think it would be a more affordable option than what is currently out there. I mean, that's really my biggest thing about the Sunday ticket, is that it's very exorbitant price-wise. I mean, you think about the MLB packages, you're getting 162 games or close to that for every team in the league. You're only getting 16 weeks of games for the NFL team. So you're getting a lot more games, and you pay less money for the MLB one. So I don't know if the NFL is that much of a premium. I guess in a lot of people's eyes it is, because there's just less opportunities. But to me, as a sports fan, baseball and football fan, I still like the MLB package better.
Yeah, you could never convince me that Major League Baseball and NBA and hockey don't have a better offering that way than the NFL ever could, just because of the amount of games and the frequency of the games.
Yep.
And like you said, the economics dictate that the other sports have a better package. Now we can argue about if the games are better, that's personal preference, but $10 a month or whatever MLB TV is, I just pay the $130 a month or a year for it.
That's same as what I do too.
So to me, I think like you said, I think that's a great deal, and everybody kind of gets all upset because they can't watch their local teams, and I mean blackout rules. Like I understand why you can't do it, but for you being in California, it's great for you because you can watch the Indians all the time.
Yep, exactly.
So that works well. And for me, I watch 2 baseball games a day, and it's never the Indians. I watch a team on the West Coast and I watch a team on the East Coast, and hopefully there's a game during the day, and I kind of flip around all day, so it's great for me. Let's talk about some players who can't do what they're supposed to do.
Yeah, it was been an interesting week in the NFL as far as player issues, on off-field / on-field issues. So let's start with the off-field one. And so we moved down to Houston with the Texans, and Ryan Mallett, the backup quarterback, sometimes starting quarterback, has had a few issues the past few years there since he got to Houston. And Mallett's supposed to join the team on the chartered flight to go play the Dolphins, and he's not there. So what he ends up doing is he books a commercial flight, flies there, joins the team in Miami, and he's there. But he blames the traffic, says, hey, the traffic caused me to miss the flight. You know what? This isn't the first time he's had issues missing things and blaming it. And, they looked back and there was actually no traffic, so he was just late. And Bill O'Brien is kind of done with his act, and he wanted him cut immediately. But lo and behold, the general manager's like, no, we need him on Sunday, so he's going to be with the team. So finally, come Monday afternoon, the decision's made to finally cut him, and he's gone now. But at what point do you have to get rid of these guys and you send a message to the team? I mean, O'Brien's supposed to have the power with the 53-man roster, yet the general manager who doesn't overrules him, and he's still there. I mean, that's kind of neutering the coach to me, don't you think?
I agree 100%. And Rick Smith, who's the general manager there, has been there for about 10 or 12 years.
Yep.
And I can't think of the guy's name. Bob McNair, I think, is the owner.
McNair's the owner. Yep.
And it's very interesting considering how hands-on in his personal businesses Bob McNair is, that he's very hands-off with the Texans right now, considering how bad they've been for the past 3 years. And for Rick Smith to come in and basically neuter, for lack of a better term, his head coach, who, like you just said, is supposed to have final say over the 53-man roster, is ridiculous to me. And I don't know if you've ever been to Houston. Houston has some of the worst traffic in the world, but on the weekends, there's no traffic ever.
Yeah, I have been there, so I'm aware of all that fun stuff, especially going to and from the airport. I know it can get very tricky at times, but now, like I said, this is the second time this season. He had during the preseason, he missed a meeting or practice because he said he overslept or his alarm clock broke. So, I mean, how many times can you cry wolf? And I mean, you got all these other players there, and Bill O'Brien's this big disciplinarian, so the backup quarterback, who's also been known to throw tantrums on the sidelines, is showing him up, and the GM's letting him get away with it, while all these other players like J.J. Watt are, they're model citizens, and they can't get away with anything, so why should he?
No, I don't disagree with anything you're saying here, and it's just, the whole thing with Ryan Mallett, I mean, it kind of, I mean, he's, his college career was weird. He was at Michigan, and then he finished at Arkansas. The way he got drafted, and then, he's in New England for all those years behind Tom Brady, and everybody thinks he's going to be good. And then he goes to Texas, and like you said, he basically falls on his face. And it's like, well, dude, you've been in the league 5 years. Like, what are you doing?
He's got the old adage of he's got $1 million arm and a 10-cent head.
Yeah, I look, here's the thing. I'm with Bill O'Brien 100% here. He should have been cut immediately on Sunday. And I can kind of understand maybe, okay, they don't have anybody else to play backup quarterback anywhere on the roster, which, all right, whatever. But I can't believe that Rick Smith would just overrule him like that. And it makes you wonder if this happens in other areas too. Maybe Bill O'Brien says, I want to get rid of Romeo Crennel. And Rick Smith says, nope, can't get rid of Romeo Crennel. And maybe Bill O'Brien says, and I can't think of the offensive coordinator's name, but maybe he says, I don't want him to be the play caller anymore. I'll do it, or I'll have somebody else do it because I'm a defensive guy. And Rick Smith says, nope. Who's really running this organization here? And I think that that's what it comes down to.
Exactly. I mean, they brought Bill O'Brien in, and they gave him this power because they were looking for him to turn around the organization after Gary Kubiak was there and, that kind of fell on hard times. But the guy you want to run the organization isn't running the organization, obviously, because Rick Smith can overrule him when he feels like it. And I mean, that's a dysfunctional organization right there. I mean, the players see that, so they're like, well, if I don't want to do what the coach says, I'll just do whatever the heck I want, and the GM will back me up or whatever. And that's just a recipe for disaster.
Agree 100%. What's up with our Cowboys?
Well, speaking of recipes for disaster, so Greg Hardy, the big free agent signing for the Cowboys, he had to set out for the first 4 weeks of the season for a suspension. He had the domestic violence or alleged domestic violence issue last year, and he missed 14 games last season until it was adjudicated, and that kind of went away to his benefit. But he's already come back to the Cowboys. He made some questionable comments about Tom Brady's wife, and then comments about coming out guns blazing, and he had, firearms were part of his issues previously as well. So he comes out this weekend, and the Cowboys are playing a tough game against the Giants, and they gave up a 100-yard punt return for a touchdown. Goes over to the special teams coach and knocks the clipboard out of his hands and starts going after him on the sidelines. Is that right anywhere?
Of course not. Like that might be the craziest thing you've ever asked me in all the years that I've known you. That literally makes no sense anywhere. Now, it isn't like the special teams coordinator was a guy who was out there blocking the play. And I understand that he's upset and he's passionate about this. But you can't make, in any industry, you can't make physical contact with people. And you can't knock things out of their hands. What was the pitcher? What was that, Papelbon or whatever, a couple of months ago?
Yep, Papelbon and Bryce Harper.
Bryce Harper, right.
Yep.
You can't do that because there's cameras. I know this is crazy, but there are cameras at football games.
Everywhere.
Yeah. People are going to see things, and people are going to talk about you. And when you sent me the links, there was this from Brandon Marshall. There was this thing from Brandon Marshall who has had his own issues with anger and violence. And I mean, I at one point in my life I was an angry guy, so I mean I can kind of understand the temper tantrums and things like that. But at some point, like Brandon Marshall said, this is the player and the person. So let's talk about the person. You have to look at yourself and you have to say, if I'm on the news all the time and we're not talking about me getting sacks or knocking down the quarterback or getting interceptions, maybe I'm the problem.
But he's not the problem, according to Jerry Jones and Jason Garrett.
Well, okay. All right, hang on. That's a different conversation right there. First of all, Jason Garrett's going to do whatever Jerry Jones tells him to do. The biggest problem in Dallas is Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones. The two biggest enablers in the NFL right now.
Yep, absolutely. So they come out after all this happens. People are putting Greg Hardy to the fire and saying he needs to be suspended, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, no, he's just being passionate. He's a leader on our team doing stuff like that. I don't know about you, but I've never had leaders do that kind of stuff.
Never in my life. Never in my life. If I were part of an organization and an alleged leader, team leader, captain, whatever, acted like that, either I would be gone or they would be gone, or they wouldn't be a leader. And certainly the CEO of my company or the boss or whatever would not tell people that he's the leader of the pack for us.
Yeah, and they're like, well, we want to sign him to an extension too. So, I mean, if you want somebody to curb destructive behavior like that, you don't incentivize them to continue to do it.
Correct. Now, let me say this about Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones. They have been consistently the only organization in the NFL who is willing to give second chances to people who have problems off the field, right? Josh Brent is the defensive tackle there, I believe, who got in the accident and killed his teammate a few years ago, and they brought him back, and that's worked out very well for them. I mean, you've never heard anything about that or about him since then, but it isn't like Greg Hardy was a saint before his last team. I mean, the guy has always been in the middle of something, and at some point, you have to think that a bell has to go on in Jerry Jones' head and say, is it really worth it? Like, I have to defend this guy 3 or 4 times since he's been here. He's only been here since March. What is it? September? I don't even know what month it is. What month
October.
It's October. Yeah. And he's been there since March. He's already had to defend this guy like 3 or 4 times. And he wants to give him an extension. What kind of sense does that make?
It doesn't. And here's the other thing, too. Like you said, he's been there since March. So he's played a total of, I believe, 2 games for them now.
Right.
This isn't like he was, let's go back to a player from their star time, or from their, when they were in the Super Bowls and stuff in the 90s. Michael Irvin.
Right.
It's well documented about Michael Irvin's issues with substance abuse problems and some other stuff. You know what? I could see some player like that who has a history with you, good guy, but he has some issues. You work with people like that. But this guy has no history there. The history that he has in other places isn't exactly good and made it questionable for you to bring him in the first place. And now he's played a total of 2 games, and there's been an incident in both games.
All right, let me spin this a different way for you. Let me ask you this question. If you are Roger Goodell, now obviously you cannot find a way for him to get out of the league, and you can't have the owners collude so that no one signs him. But if you're Roger Goodell, what are you thinking when you see this and then you turn on ESPN or Fox Sports 1 or whatever Monday morning, and they're not talking about anything else that happens in the games, and the only thing they're talking about is Greg Hardy again?
Well, I mean, the first thing I'm gonna obviously 4-letter words are gonna be coming out of my mouth.
Right.
That's my first reaction to it. And I mean, he's worked hard to clean up the league. I mean, obviously, his efforts of late have kind of been turned around on him by the court system. So, I mean, that's part of the issue, too, he's probably thinking, I would love to do something about this, but I can't do anything about this. I mean, let's be honest. Based on his track record, I would say there's a good chance that Hardy's going to do something that's going to get himself in trouble. And I think that's all the NFL can do is just wait for that to happen at this point. It's sad to say, but I think that's where they're at.
Right. And I agree with everything you said about Goodell, obviously. I mean, and many people will probably say that I'm the Roger Goodell defender, but I'm just the realist, right? Like Goodell tried to suspend the guy. He did. He suspended the guy for 10 games, and it got overturned on appeal. Like, I never know what more they want from Roger Goodell. Sure. I mean, yes, Ray Rice screwed that up. I think we can all agree on that. Had the video, didn't have the video. I mean, whatever your position is there, change the policy. Like, I think it's a good policy now. But if you suspend these guys a certain number of games and it gets overturned on appeal, I mean, what do you want Goodell and the NFL and Troy Vincent and those guys to do? Like, they can't go slash their tires so they can't show up to work.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't understand. So and you're right about Greg Hardy. I mean, it's a no-win situation. Like, it would be a win situation if no one would sign him. And I kind of didn't think anybody would. Like, I kind of thought he would sit out like Ray Rice, but Jerry Jones just went crazy.
Yeah. He saw those 16 sacks he had last year. He's like, oh, we got to get him on our defense.
I can't believe they're going to give him an extension.
I can't either, but I think they are. But time will tell on that, and time will tell again what happens on the next episode of Suits and Laterals. So join Jeff, Rich, and I next week as we'll come back and see what's going on in the NFL, see how many teams are still undefeated. Whatever else happens in the following weeks, we'll see if Greg Hardy gets himself into any more trouble possibly, or whatever other knucklehead Johnny Manziel or what.
You know what we should do, Chris? We should have started like like when you're at a job site and like no injuries in like 5 days or whatever. We
had no arrests in September.
Well, no, I think we just need a clock for Greg Hardy. Like, everybody else is fine. I just like Greg Hardy is kind of the focus right now.
Be sure to download our podcast from iTunes or any other fine podcasting service. You can also find us at suitsandlaterals.com on the fourlights.fm podcasting network, or on Twitter at SuitsLaterals. And we look forward to seeing you again next week. Damian, thanks for joining me this week and filling in for Jeff.
Thanks for having me, Chris. I appreciate it.
And we'll see you guys next time.